He is like no other CEO. Former co-CEO of Chipotle, we're talking leadership, his book, Love is Free, Guac is Extra, and his new documentary series. You won't want to miss my sit-down with Monty Moran. Welcome to this episode of What's Up with Wendy's podcast. My special guest today, everyone's favorite Mexican grill, my kids and mine included, the former CEO, co-CEO of Chipotle. We'll be talking about that in his new book, Love is Free, Guac is Extra. I love that title. And his new documentary series, Connected, and so much more. I'm so happy to welcome to my show, Monty Moran.
Good morning, Wendy. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for being here.
No, I'm glad to be here.
All right. Before we start, I have to say I was doing all my research about you. And what I love the most about reading everything about you is that you're not the typical CEO or like any other person I've ever met from what I've read.
Well, that's definitely true. For better or for worse, that's true.
No, I think it's for better. And I think that a lot of people will learn from reading your book and from, talking to you and hearing about you. You get to know people, not like a quiz getting to know people, but you really get to know their personalities, their families, their likes, their dislikes. When a CEO walks into a room and talks to somebody, you would think normally like they're going to be this very strict person, just like wanting to get down to business, but you're not that guy.
No, I'm not. And, people always notice that when I sat down to speak with them in the restaurants, they'd be like, "You're the CEO? Oh, wow, but you're so normal." They'd always say, like, "You're so normal." And I'd be like, "Well, what am I supposed to be like?" Like some total prick coming in here. But anyway, it was really funny. But you're so normal. Wow, you're like a real person. And I was like, well, yep, I guess you're allowed to even be a real person when you're a CEO of a company. So yeah, it was pretty funny. It was always very flattering, and it was really fun to see people's reaction.
I know, but that's the thing about you is that you don't expect that. Like if a CEO says, "Oh, they'll come to chat with you," they don't usually ask you the kind of questions that you would sit down and ask and talk about and get to know somebody and their heart and their family and et cetera. But we'll get more into that. Can you take us back to the beginning of your career? You were an attorney for 10 years and then with no experience in the food industry, the real estate, restaurant business, you became the co-CEO of Chipotle. Like, wow.
Yeah. It was more of a smooth transition than it might sound from that description, but that is accurate. I mean, so I became a lawyer. I went to Pepperdine Law School out in Malibu, California, and I became a Los Angeles lawyer for a few years, and I was a trial lawyer. So I did a lot of trial work, mediations, binding arbitrations, and thousands of depositions. So I was, I did a lot of very small cases because I started out on these great big cases, and I found that I wasn't getting enough experience actually in the courtroom because those were cases where a junior associate basically was just carrying the briefcase of the senior partner. And I went to the senior partnership and I said, "Hey, can I do something like, can I have my own cases?" And they're like, "Well, we got this, kind of crappy work if you want to do it, like these auto accidents and auto fraud stuff." And I said, "Yeah, give me that stuff." They're like, "Well, you're crazy, but okay." And so I started doing a lot of my own cases. And I had right away, I had 65 of my own open files, each of them completely active. And so I was literally taking deposition, like more than one deposition a day on average, and going to court almost every single day for, open court hearings where I had to make arguments in front of the judge and jury trials and everything. So I got lots of experience very, very quickly over the 3 years that I practiced in Los Angeles. And then when I came back to Colorado, I joined a very small law firm here called, at the time, Messner and Reeves, and later it was changed to Messner and Reeves. So I started there and started working to build up a client base. And after a few years, after a couple of years, I was named a partner. And after a few years, I was named the CEO of that law firm. And so things happened very quickly in Denver, and it was really fun. And so at the law firm, I built a culture, a certain kind of culture, which is the culture I describe in the book, Love is Free, Guac is Extra. And that culture was something that when Steve Ells, who founded Chipotle, he came over and to talk to me at the law firm, and he saw that culture and he said, "Wow, like, how did you do this? This is incredible." And what he was referring to is that we had, everyone in the firm, we had these very, very bright young people who were working extremely hard, but were really happy and stoked to be there. And he just thought, "Man, this feels really good here. It's like, this feels like people are really passionate." And so how'd you do it? And so I started to describe to him how I built the culture. And So he said, well, could you come do this at Chipotle? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not a restaurant guy really. I mean, love food, but I'm really a lawyer. So I said that's some version of no for about 4 years. And he kept coming back and asking, but then he kept pushing and pushing. And finally he said some magic words that really appealed to me, I guess, or that infected my brain in a way I couldn't shake them. And he said, you keep saying that you're a lawyer, but you're not a lawyer. You're a leader. Like a lawyer is what you're doing, but a leader is what you are. And I was like, oh, well, okay. And so he said, why don't you come from,
Those are magic words, by the way.
Yeah. And so, so kind of, I was like, really? And he goes, you could make a much bigger impact on a lot more people's lives if you came to Chipotle, because we've got thousands of people and we're growing fast. And so I said yes. Eventually, okay, I'll do it. And then I came over as president and COO, and then a couple of years later was promoted to co-CEO with Steve. So it was kind of a cool journey. I first started just going to all the leadership meetings as a lawyer. I went to all the leadership meetings at Chipotle, and at the leadership meetings, I was very vocal. I had opinions, and I guess I was probably the most vocal. And so. People started to rely on me and ask me for more and more help and to do more and more things that had nothing to do with legal work. And all of a sudden I felt very involved, and then I was going to board meetings, and Steve asked me to be secretary of the company. And anyway, so it just kind of progressed in a very smooth way. It was really fun.
It's unbelievable the way, first of all, I like the word that you said, you build a culture. I like that. Yeah. And I love the magic words that you're a leader. And those would have gotten to me too, obviously. But when you first became the co-CEO of Chipotle, it was just the original burrito chain. And under your leadership, you took it and transformed it to a Fortune 5000 superstar that it is today. Pretty remarkable. And 4 years, I didn't realize that. 4 years he kept after you, and then until you finally said yes.
Yeah, exactly. I just stayed at the law firm. And, during that time, I did get more and more involved at Chipotle. And that's when I became part of the leadership team and started going to the board meetings. And, and actually, eventually, I was even given a business card, a Chipotle business card, which said Monty Moran, General Counsel. So I became the General Counsel of Chipotle, even though I was actually a partner of a law firm, right across the street. So I started to look more and more like an employee, but the reality was I was still spending 70% of my time doing legal work for other clients that had nothing to do with Chipotle. So, but I was spending, 30% of my time on Chipotle. So it became a lot of my time. And so I did get more and more involved. And then finally, I was hesitant to join the company as well because McDonald's owned it, and I did not want to work for McDonald's. That sounded imperfect. And so, but eventually I saw that McDonald's was going to spin Chipotle public, and that if I said yes at that point, then I would be able to take Chipotle public as its president and not work for McDonald's, but rather work for an independent public company. So I would be sort of my own boss, if you will, or, or at least work at the pleasure of the board of directors, of which I was a part. So that was kind of a neat time to go on board. And so then I joined, and it was wonderful. I mean, I really hit the ground running, and for some reason, I felt like I knew what to do right away, and that was to work on building the same kind of culture at Chipotle so that we could, maximize the amount of, empowerment that our people felt, and maximize, therefore, the amount of the effectiveness of our very significant team of mostly young entry-level employees at Chipotle.
Can you take us back to the backstory of Chipotle with Steve? It seems so simple. The story seems so simple. He got a loan. He had a passion for cooking. And is that how it all began? Like an $85,000 loan and this? Yeah.
So Steve worked at a restaurant in San Francisco called Stars after he got out of cooking school in Hyde Park, New York, the Culinary Institute of America. So he went to cooking school for a couple of years after college, and then he went out to San Francisco to work at this restaurant, which was a very cutting-edge restaurant at the time. It was one of the best restaurants in the country, and it was run by Jeremiah Tower, a very famous chef. And he had come from Chez Panisse with Alice Waters, and so it was really cutting-edge, sort of cool, evolving sort of style of restaurant. And so Steve worked there. And while he worked there, he would also stop by these burrito joints in the Mission District of San Francisco that had giant tortillas and crammed everything inside. And so he thought, man, I'd like to start my own version of that using some of the talents and cooking skills that I've learned in cooking school and working at Stars. And so he came back to Colorado and and did that. And the idea of doing that was that he wanted to he really wanted to start a white tablecloth, high-end restaurant. But he knew that the economics of that were very, very the economics of that are very difficult. Most people go out of business very quickly. So he thought, well, why don't I just start a cash cow like burrito thing, and that'll give me some money to help me survive the downturns in the white tablecloth restaurant. But the burrito thing did so damn well that he thought, well, I'll open one more, and then maybe one more, and then maybe one more, and that kept going until we had many. So then his white tablecloth restaurant idea sort of faded in the background, and we put our effort really into building Chipotle.
Amazing. I read that you said that whatever job you had, you wanted to please everyone that you worked for, and prove to the boss that you and the client that they made the best decision in the world to hire you. You even said that your first job, this is one of my favorite stories. Your first W-2 job, let's say, okay, at Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
I read that you said that you liked wherever you came from. You loved doing what you did, and you wanted to prove to that boss that you were the best.
Yeah, I mean, I was making $2.85 an hour at that Dairy Queen, and I thought that was a great deal because I got free food, and I loved eating semi hamburgers and fries, and just was gorging because I had this giant metabolism as a 15-year-old kid. And so I thought I was died and gone to heaven. I could have ice cream cones whenever I want. That's really, but beyond that, I really wanted to, I felt lucky to have any job, and I felt like, oh my God, someone's paying me. It's like I can't believe it, they're paying me, and so I wanted to prove to them that they'd made a great decision in hiring me, and I wanted to prove to them that I would provide a lot more value to them than the money they were paying me, and that was just the attitude I always had, and. I had that in every job. I was a janitor, car part salesman, a mechanic. I worked in all sorts of different jobs, and most of them would have been considered rather dead-end jobs, I would say, by most people. But like I say in the book, there's no such thing as a dead-end job. That's an absurd statement.
I was going to say, and every person out there, especially these college kids, and especially now, where it's so hard during COVID and this pandemic for these kids to, get these jobs now, that there is no dead end job. And I think that's really important that you said that, because every little building piece leads you to the next journey that you're on. Like you said, you did all these jobs.
I mean, also, nothing matters but the present. That's just a basic concept that I really try to live by, that nothing matters but the present, because there is no future. In fact, when you get to the future, it's called the present. So, you really just need to focus on what you're doing right now, do the very best you can at it, no matter what it is. And if you have the attitude that it's a dead-end job and that you're trying to get rid of it to get to the next thing, you will not be very good at it. You'll not bring much passion to it. You will not be at your best. But if you have the attitude that, hey, this is an opportunity for me to make the best hamburger I can, make the best fries I can, treat customers really well, and really, really stick out as, an unusually special employee and a helpful person, and someone who cares about our guests and the people who come into the restaurant and the other employees. People are going to notice that. And when they do notice that, they will inevitably call upon you to do more and to rise into positions of greater leadership. And those positions of greater leadership will come with more responsibility, the ability to interact with more people. And of course, you'll probably get paid more and so forth, but the getting paid more part will actually not be the most important part for you. Getting paid more is nice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to imply that that's not important. And of course, you got to get to a threshold point where you can take care of yourself and your family. But beyond that, the money becomes less important. What becomes most important is the kind of satisfaction you feel from doing a great job and from being important to other people and helpful to them.
It's well said. If you just know, I'm talking to Monty Moran, former co-CEO of Chipotle. We're talking about his new book now, Love is Free, Guac is Extra, which is one of my favorite titles. And before we even get into the amazing book and all that's in it, you summarize something so well that just really got to me. You said, what you're doing now is what matters most. Doing it very well with all your passion and energy, people will notice. And when they do, they'll want more of your time. Eventually, they'll want more than you can give. At that point, you'll need a team to help you, and you will need to lead that team. Well said.
Yeah, so leadership really arises naturally as a necessity when all of a sudden a lot is asked of you, and in fact, more is asked of you than you can do. And once more is being asked of you than you can accomplish, you have two choices, really. One, fail to do it, or two,